Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, this is weird. This is different than our other room. Okay, so I guess my sobriety day, oh, thank you, Jeff, by the way. My sobriety day is November 21st of 2020, so I am shortly into my second, I guess this is my second year of sobriety technically, I don't know, yeah. So I guess I will just start from the beginning. So I grew up in Dallas. I have lived here my whole life. I have 3 older brothers, and I'm Jewish, so I grew up going to Temple Emmanuel, which is a Reformed synagogue. And my childhood was pretty just run-of-the-mill normal. I grew up in a very privileged environment. I went to Green Hill for my entire life, things like that. So it was definitely a very sheltered life, but it was perfectly fine and dandy. The only thing that wasn't entirely dandy was that I was a very sensitive, emotional kid born into a family of people who were just emotions, what? So basically, the only emotions we ever had in my family were anger or anxiety. Everything other than that was just sort of go sit in your room until you feel better, and then you can rejoin society. So it was a lot of suck it up and deal was really the message that got put out to me from the beginning of time. My mom used to tell me I had this thing called a cope rope, which is an imaginary piece of rope that symbolizes how much you can cope. But the thing is the rope always gets longer. It's this weird concept. So it's basically regardless, you have this rope, so just suck it up and deal. So yeah, that's a weird thing. And word raincoats. So if I would come home from school that someone was being mean to me, my mom would tell me to put on my word raincoat and let the words just fall off. I mean, there's no oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That sounds terrible. Any of that. But yeah, I mean, I started having problems in end of middle school, high school, just this sort of not fitting in and sort of a lot of negative talk in my own head. But I didn't drink in high school pretty much at all. My junior year, I spent one summer in Spain on a homestay trip. And I remember I went into it oh, I don't drink. What? We're high schoolers. What are you all talking about? And it was a 4-week trip, and at the very end of the trip, I drank for the very first time in my entire life because I was tired of being left out, and everyone else was going to these discotecas and drinking, and I finally was just I want to go to the discoteca and drink, and that was not a stellar experience at all. Yeah, I drank a lot of tequila, and that was basically it, and got way too drunk, from day one, and ended up being taken advantage of by this random guy in this alley, which was just an interesting situation. And then I just went home to my homestay parents' house and just started throwing up. So after that, I was yeah, no, I'm never drinking again. This is really not good for me at all. And then I went to Connecticut for college my very first year. And I didn't really drink a lot that first semester, but I was on the track team. So when the older people on the track team were okay, drink and now go run laps around the track, I did do that. And so it was funny because for the longest time after that, whenever I drank, I just had this intense urge to go run, really, really, really fast. I'm pretty sure that was from the hazing of the track team. And I did not like it in Connecticut at all. Connecticut is an interesting place. There wasn't the same southern hospitality that people down here have that I was very, very, very accustomed to. And also, so I was having all of these issues with myself and all of this in high school. And then, I mean, we all just thought the solution was for me to get as far away from as possible and start new, and I'd be just fine. Shockingly, that was not the case. So it was probably end of the first semester to the beginning of the winter semester where I started having a lot of problems. I still wasn't really drinking, but I was like overtaking medication like none other just to try to like escape from the terribleness that I felt inside. And after about the fourth time I like tried to kill myself, my roommate found me like unconscious in our room, and I got taken by ambulance to the hospital with the dean of students in the ambulance. So shockingly, they told me I could not come back until like I sought treatment for like trying to kill myself one too many times. So I ended up at a residential treatment facility for like behavioral health. It wasn't like substance or anything. And that was like really terrible because like I didn't want to be there. I had no interest in being there. I was forced there against my will. I really just wanted like to be with like my parents and have them like give me a hug, and they picked me up in Connecticut and dropped me off in Illinois. And then didn't come see me for like 4 months. So it's like, it really just made things worse. So I got out of there somehow. And about 2 weeks after I got home, I like tried to kill myself again. And so I guess it was always just it was like an expectation that no matter what I was feeling, what was happening, that I did what I needed to do, which was go to college, get a degree, work, all of those things. So, I mean, 6 weeks, not even 6 weeks, like 3 weeks after being discharged from residential treatment and like a week after trying to kill myself, I started college at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. Go Roos. And so I wanted to leave the school in Connecticut for sure. But I wanted to go to Emory University in Atlanta, which is where one of my brothers was and where both my parents went, and one of my other brothers had already graduated. My parents were like, hell no, we tried sending you far away. Now you're going to like be in our backyard. So I got into Emory, and then I also got into Austin College. My parents were like, yeah, no, you're not going to Emory. So I ended up at Austin College. I was a little bitter about it. But in hindsight, it was for sure the right place for me. So I started there, and that's really when I was just like, I'm going to drink because that's how people my age make friends, and that's what I want to do. So that first semester, I mean, I wasn't like some crazy party kid, but like I for sure went out every weekend and drank. And there were several times where like I made myself sick and would like, for some reason, whenever I got sick from being drunk, I like called my dad. Was like, Dad, come get me. I don't feel good. And he's like, literally, no, why are you calling me? And so I was studying physics and math, and also education. And I don't know, I was really, really, really miserable. But I was appearing as though everything was fine on the outside. And I was like driving back to Dallas like twice a week for like therapy and like all of that. And I was just like very, very, very unhappy, and I was making friends but not keeping them. It's one of my big issues, because it's like I'm so worried that people won't like me, so then I like overshare to make sure that they're gonna like me regardless of what I tell them, and then they're like, oh my God, you're nuts, and like distance themselves from me. So that's never fun. And then all was sort of like going along well. I was on track to graduate. Everything was going fine. I was in the teacher program at Austin College. I wanted to be a physics and math teacher. And there was someone who was also on that same track, physics and math with teaching, who I thought was really cool. There weren't a lot of people in physics and math and teaching. And we started, I don't know, like having like a fling. I don't know, like we were texting each other. This was the extent of the fling. And I ended up going over to his house to what I literally thought was going to be doing homework, because like we had fucking homework to do. And I ended up being sexually assaulted by him at his house. So that sort of threw a monkey wrench in an already like not so great situation. And I didn't know what to do or what to report or what not, but I knew I had to tell my professor that I was not going to be at my student teaching the next morning. Like, that was really just not going to happen. And so I called her, and I guess from the bizarre situation and like obvious lies I was giving to her about why at 12:30 in the morning I couldn't be at my student teaching at 8 a.m. the next morning, she placed a phone call and the school got involved, whole 9 yards. And so basically the last part of my time at Austin College was spent desperately trying to graduate while trying to avoid this person who is in all of my classes with me, and the school being very much caught in between protecting me while also not doing anything against him because he technically hasn't been convicted of anything yet. He fucking admitted over text message. Anyway, long story short, that's when I really started like drinking. I mean, I was like, the number of bottles of wine I drank in the bathtub or like by myself, just like literally trying to drown everything out, because my focus was like trying to graduate and not just falling apart. Because like investigations into sexual assault, like I don't know if y'all know, they're really freaking intrusive. And he was in a fraternity, and the fraternity was making up lies about. Anyway, we're gonna move forward. He got expelled, and I ended up graduating. But I mean, I graduated by the skin of my freaking teeth. Linear algebra was the bane of my existence, and because I had to add it 6 weeks late because of that. So I was like already behind, and like, God help me, I just don't understand matrices. And so I just remember the professor was like, look, if you get a 60 on the exam, I'll let you pass this class. And I mean, I studied my ass off and I got a 43. I don't get 43s. And like the professor was like, whatever, like you're gonna graduate. And I was like, sweet. So for the longest time, it's like I felt like I didn't really graduate because like I didn't get the grade to complete linear algebra. But so then at the end of that, so the drinking was like real out of control, and my therapist and I were like not really on the same wavelength anymore. And so one day I got really mad at her, and I decided that the best thing to do was to pregame therapy. So I was at my parents' house with a bottle of wine, drinking it before therapy. And then I went to therapy, like fuming with my therapist. Like I was so mad. And I was going to tell her all about how mad I was. But I was also drunk. So I get there, and I'm like, and she was like holding my medication due to my tendency to take all of it. So I was like, fine, if you're going to fire me, then like give me back all my meds. And she's like, yeah, okay, they're yours, whatever. So I was like, watch this. So like I put like all of them, like dump them all onto my hand. I was like, I'm going to take them. And she was like, sweet, I'm going to call the police. And I was like, yeah, go for it. So then she's like actually like legitimately on the phone with 911. I'm like, oh my God, no, stop. Like, please, like don't do that. And like, she doesn't give a shit at this point. She's like, no, they're coming. You can put the meds back or not, but like they're coming. But then I freak out, and I'm like, oh shit, now I actually have to take them. So then I take all of them, but then I freak out that I've taken all of them, and then she's like, you need some space, and like leaves me in her office by myself. Like, if you're a therapist, don't do that. It's not a good idea. So then like I proceed to start trashing her office. Turning over furniture, and like her file cabinets were unlocked, ? So obviously I started throwing all of her files around the whole, it's great. And then but for me, when I do something that I know I shouldn't have done, for the longest time, I would get more freaked out and be like, oh, well, we gotta keep going. Like I had an inability to backtrack or like stop. Like it was just like, well, now if we've already done it, so let's just keep going. So I ended up like smashing a vase and then like picking up a shard of the vase, and like it was just a disaster. So then like the paramedics come. Love paramedics. They're always so nice and helpful. And then the police came, who are far less nice and helpful. And then they had to like tackle me to the ground. Anyway, I got taken to Presby Hospital where my father works, and like in handcuffs. And the ER doc is like, "Oh, are you Evan Bates's daughter?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And so that was like really uncomfortable. So yeah, obviously I had to get a new therapist. We skipped a big part of the story. I worked at a strip club for like 5 months in college. No, 5 weeks in college. That's the part we missed. Yeah, so on top of like this depression with all of this stuff, I was like, you know what? My parents want me to do this. I'm going to swing the opposite way. I'm going to work at a strip club. And that is, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. Would not recommend it. It is a terribly toxic environment, and I know that the majority of you are men, but men are trash. Sorry. Sorry, I love all of you, though. You all are not the trash part of man. Anyway, but that actually is how I was able to get Tucker, was with my stripper money. So that was like a really good thing that came out of that. So 10 out of 10 about that use of money. Anyway, so after I trashed my therapist's office, then I was just like trying to get a job, and like now I don't have a therapist, so I'm gonna like go call up the guy that I used to know from the strip club and like hang out with him, because what else am I gonna do with my life? So that's when I started doing cocaine. Not because I liked cocaine. I don't even think it had an effect on me because I was already on such a high dose of Vyvanse. But like I for sure did it for like 8 weeks was like my glory days of cocaine. And then my new therapist was like, if you don't stop doing cocaine, I'm going to fire you. And I was like, cool, I'll stop doing cocaine. And then my psychiatrist sent me to AA because she told me if I went to NA, I would just get more drugs. That's literally what she told me. So I went to my first AA meeting, which I didn't even know AA was a real thing. I thought it was only in the movies. So when people were actually like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic, I was like, oh my God, it's real. Yeah, it was like this whole new club that I thought was make-believe. So that was good for me in the sense that, like, being new out of college and stuff like that, it gave me a social circle. So I had friends I had game night with and all of that. And, like, I'm sure not drinking, like, really did me a world of good. And obviously, like, not using cocaine and, like, being with scary people who use cocaine and deal cocaine and frequent strip clubs. Yeah. But I didn't piece together that the sobriety is really what was helping me and not just the having friends part. And so about, like, 3 months into it, I was like, oh, I don't really need this. And I just sort of, like, went back living my life. And I did get a job out of college as a teacher, but I didn't really like teaching. So I was teaching and all of that, and still, like, heavily drinking. Like, every night I got home from work, I was drinking. And I was still, like, just very unhappy in general. And so in March of 2019, they told me that they weren't renewing my contract at the school. Part of it was a school in East Plano, and that was just not my scene, and I was not a good fit, and I looked like I was about 14, and these high schoolers really just wanted nothing to do with me. But I mean, I took them not renewing my contract as, you're a complete failure of life, you should just go kill yourself. So that's what I met up with this guy I knew from, like, Hinge or something, drank with him, went back to my apartment, and tried to kill myself. I tried to hang myself from a fan, but I'm really, so you'll get the sense I'm really bad at trying to kill myself. I'm just not good at it. So, like, the fan, I just, like, broke the fan when I was like, well, fuck. So then I just took every single medication I had in my house. And I think my parents were out of town, but I had left them a voicemail that I didn't get my contract renewed, and they were like, well, something's not going to go well with Sarah. And they were trying to call me, and I wasn't answering. Long story short, they sent paramedics to my house, and I was having seizures. So I got taken by ambulance, and apparently I refused to go without Tucker, so Tucker also went in the ambulance. Classic. And I started having seizures, and my parents obviously, like, jumped on a plane back from California to Dallas, and they got there, like, 5 a.m. the next morning, and they ended up having to intubate me because they couldn't get the seizures to stop. And so I was in an 8-day coma. That's coma number 1. Get excited, there's another one. So that was coma number 1. And I mean, I didn't really have like any effects from it other than like sort of put a giant pause on my life. But yeah, got a new job, started working at Highland Park at their middle school teaching math, and just like went on about my merry way. Still very much drinking heavily. And then COVID happened, and I don't know if I started drinking more, but I started like caring a lot less, and then I didn't want to be teaching anymore. So I was like trying to like change career fields, which for me is like very, very, very stressful, because I mean, what I knew was education and teaching, and now I'm gonna like try to do computer science. And so it was just kind of a rocky time. And then in July of 2020, so I have a very hard time when people go out of town because of my inherent fear of abandonment. So my parents were out of town and my therapist was out of town. So I got all freaked out and took all of my SSRI, which, if you don't know, is a bad thing, and you can get very severe serotonin syndrome, which will also put you in a coma. So yeah, my parents found me the next morning completely naked. The firemen had to break down my apartment door, and apparently I was just like naked and out of my mind. Because apparently serotonin syndrome, like your body temperature goes up so high, like you start running like a crazy like 106 fever, and you start like ripping off all your clothes, but you're like out of it. So like, I don't even know. So I get taken to Parkland, and also was in another coma for like 9 days. That coma was a little bit more rough. I woke up after the coma and like, I had like no feelings. I was like a robot. Like my brain was like, Tucker, it was like he was my awkward roommate. So it's like, I remember we were like back in my apartment. I was like, I'm pretty sure I like you a lot, but I don't really know what to do with you. But like, I guess I'm supposed to take care of you. But if y'all know me, like I'm in love with Tucker, and it's just like that part was not there. So it took like a significant amount of time, probably like a month, maybe 6 weeks, for my brain to actually like bounce back from that. And I had my new job at this point. I was doing a boot camp, so I had a little hiccup in the boot camp due to my coma. But I still somehow ended up getting a job. So I start the new job, and I mean, I was drinking during the day when I was supposed to be working. I remember there was like one time where I thought my boss was off, and it's remote, so I was like working from home. But I mean, there was like one day where my boss like called me, and I wasn't expecting it, but I had been day drinking, and I just remember the next day my boss was like, "It was so great talking to you. You were so talkative. It was just great hearing everything about you." And I was like, "Oh, fuck my life." And then there was one time where, I also was really drunk during the day, and a woman who was in my boot camp with me, she's a special one. Anyway, I was like, it was like around the election time. So I was like poking at her political foibles and beliefs. Yeah, but I was very drunk, and obviously they were inappropriate questions to be asking a coworker. About 2 weeks later, she ended up becoming my manager. So that was rough. That was really rough. And then, I guess, like, with the drinking and all that, and then I know that AA is about rigorous honesty. So I did a really good job of lying about everything. So, I mean, yeah, just everything. And my therapist, like, finally, I mean, she knew that the whole time, but she finally like confronted me with like all of the plethora of lies I had been living. And that was probably the most overwhelming thing that has ever happened to me, because like there were things that I was just like, I'm gonna have to take this to my grave, and things that I constantly wanted to kill myself over. And now it's like, oh my God, people know these things. And I ended up drinking with a neighbor and then went into her bathroom. And so I'm like not a drug person. I don't like being out of control. So like when I take drugs, it's to like obliterate myself and just like not be conscious. So I went into her bathroom and she had some OxyContin. So I took the OxyContin, went back to my apartment and took 16 and a half OxyContin. You should not take 16 and a half OxyContin. You will start having a lot of trouble breathing. So I ended up getting taken by ambulance to UT Southwestern. And obviously I'm like, oh, it was an accident. I don't know how that happened, because like that's really how I avoided the psych ward after, I think I've only been to a psych ward once, which is shocking. So I ended up at UT Southwestern, and the psych, like, not med students, but like people in their residency, turns out one of them who had been on a rotation at Parkland when I was there in July was now doing her rotation at UT Southwestern in November. So she was like, yeah, wait, no, I know you. You did this like 4 months ago too. Like the gig is up. I was like, oh, fuck. So that is when I actually got put in a psych ward, which was not a fun experience. But I mean, this doctor was like, look, like you have a problem. Like you're gonna get really, really, really hurt. And you need to, like, she's like, every time this has happened, there's been a lot of alcohol in your system. I know that people say that alcohol is a depressant. It is. It makes me super suicidal, similar to benzos. Not good for me. And so when I was in the medical hospital for like 4 days, and then they transferred me to Zale Psych. And it was sort of when I was there that I was like, maybe I should do that AA thing again. Because there had been enough situations in my life where I have almost died, and that it was due to alcohol. Not that the alcohol is what was gonna kill me, but what I was doing after drinking alcohol was just out of hand. And I was gonna get really hurt. So I just was like, you know what? I still know people in the program. I'm just gonna go to a meeting. So I got discharged from the psych hospital on November 20th, Friday night. And I went to my first meeting at the women's meeting at Preston Group Saturday morning. And that was November 21st, 2020. So that is when I finally realized that maybe alcohol was a problem in my life. Just maybe. And at first it was definitely difficult, and I don't know, it was just weird. And at the same time, it wasn't that someone else was making me do it, like my psychiatrist forced me to go to WHAM, any of that stuff. It was actually like, you know what, like I need to make a change. And I loved my job. I love my job. It's the same job I had. And like I didn't want to screw it up. And I was like, you have too much going for you. Like, what the hell are you doing? So I started going to meetings regularly, and then I met you guys at some point, which was really awesome. I really like you guys, because some of the things that frustrate me about AA, like it being written, like the books being written by like a bunch of Christian white men in the 1930s, y'all also have frustration with. So a lot of the things that I find hard to take from AA, this group, it's just more progressive, which is a very good fit for me, and I relate to a lot of you in many, many, many ways. And so just slowly through my sobriety, I made friends who are sober. I was able to make friends who aren't sober and be around them when they were drinking. And it's probably the most confident in my own skin I've ever been is when I'm sober, which is very strange because I used to drink a lot because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, but it turns out that made it worse. And I guess just like in the time since I've been sober, I've worked the steps, and it's just very interesting how much of a difference it's made in my life. And what's crazy to me is like the life that I have now, like it's not perfect. I have so much growth to keep making and things like that. But the fear of never having anything like the life I have right now is why I used to try to kill myself, is because I just never even thought that like being content was ever going to be possible. And I mean, I still have struggles. Like I go to therapy like all the frickin' time. But I'm actually able to make progress and growth in therapy because of my sobriety and using the tools I've learned in the program. And I've gotten promotions at my job. I think I'm actually like part of the team. People like come to me for like advice about like work and also not work, which is very strange. I was like, why do you want me giving you advice? Like, are you kidding? And then like a couple months ago, my boss was like, hey, like my daughter, she's like a little younger than you. She's having trouble getting a job. Like, can you just like give her some life advice? And I was like, what? I was like, I'm pretty sure you don't want life advice for your daughter from me, but like, okay. And it was very funny to see how I do have strengths and talents, and I do have things that I can share with people and be of service in multiple different ways. And it's just a very, very good feeling, and I like it a lot. And as insecure as I have been for the most of all of my life, let's be real, the confidence I have in my sobriety is what really helps me. I know my life is better sober. It is very apparent. It's not even a maybe, like, oh, well, maybe I could drink. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, no, it was awful. So it's just been very, very eye-opening. And I also realized at Thanksgiving that it's like, oh, wait, my gosh, my family doesn't have problems because of me. Like, they have their own problems. I am not the cause of their problems. So that was like a very fascinating experience, was to be with 26 members of my family at Thanksgiving being like the only sober one. That was fascinating. And I guess like moving forward, I just want to keep growing in my sobriety, keep figuring out how to be an adult, because like being 26 is not easy. I'm still trying to figure out how to be an adult. But sort of just knowing that I do have like a purpose and I have things to offer this world and the people I interact with, I do have the ability to make a difference with, and I can be of service, and I can be a good employee, and I can be a good friend. And I mean, I've been on camping trips with like friends I made from recreational kickball. Like, what? I'm playing recreational kickball? And it's like totally fine. Like they go to a bar after our games, and I was like so amazed that at bars they give you free soda. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this like life hack. So yeah, I'm just like, every time I go to bars with my friends, I'm like, guess what? Did you know they give you free soda at bars? Like, yeah. So that's like a fun little party trick. But it's been really great, and I'm closer with my family. There had been times where I was so much of a mess that my parents never like cut me off, but it's like I couldn't be at their house by myself because they were worried. I mean, my mom still keeps her Ambien locked in a safe, even though like I don't live there anymore, because she's like scarred from when I took all of it and was hallucinating for like 4 days. So I mean, like my poor parents have been through a lot. But just like where I'm at with relationships right now, it's just like, I don't know, it's like what I've always wanted. It's like pretty cool. And yeah, I hope to continue growing in the program and have sponsees and keep being of service and just like a good person. And I very much resonate with how we go based off of attraction, not promotion. And I'm not scared to tell people I'm in the program, because it's like, why would I hide this? Like, it's given me so much back in my life that obviously I would want to share it. And things that I used to be ashamed about, I mean, do I love that I did those certain things like work at a strip club? No, I really hate it, and I wish I had never done it. But it's not like if someone were to find out, I would have to kill myself. Like, I'm at peace with it. Like, I did it. It was dumb. I was a kid. YOLO. I don't know. But it's like my past is not something that I run away from anymore. It's something that I accept and I try to use to help other people, and also use as a really good gauge of my growth. Because where I was a year and like 2.5 months ago, where I am now is like light years ahead of that. And it's because of this program and the people I've met in this program and all of that. I have no idea what time it is. I probably didn't talk for long enough. Oh my God, I did pretty good. So, do I keep talking? I'm happy to. Okay. I don't want to keep babbling, but I do have all of you in this room to thank for the life I have now, and I will always be with y'all. Big fan. So thank you very much for always accepting me, accepting Tucker, and I'm just very glad that I have found a family with you guys, so thank you.